Tēnā koutou e te iwi. Ha ki te ha, manawa ki te manawa. Tihei mauri ora. Kia rongo koutou ki te reo irirangi or Tune Me In podcast. Huge welcome to Duncan and Ginny, who have come in for a very brief interview here on day 2 of the Mensa conference. Now, I saw that you both had your workshop earlier on today. How did that go?
Oh, well, it went really, really well. We had more people in than we were expecting, and they were a fun group that got into the initial drama work we did.
Yeah. It was a good mixture of some secondary and some primary teachers. And so the workshop was pitched at catering for both groups in terms of looking at the musical that we created with our students for year 7 and 8. And so Ginny was focusing on the way of creating a musical, of kind of coming up with the original concept and how that developed into a story arc and how that developed into a script with her students. And then I was focusing on how my year 13s took that work from the intermediate students and used it as an NCA composition and songwriting task to then basically write all the music for this 1 hour musical that we did called the Aurora Stone. Yeah, there was people in the workshop that were interested in various different things, and so they all took something out of it, which was great.
Yeah, nice one. So if listeners want to find out more, there's a whole article about the Aurora Stone in the Tune Me In magazine, which is out now and it's also online. What do you think was the most rewarding part of going through that process?
For me, the most rewarding part is the ownership that the students take of the work, that they have that sense that they created a musical. The year 7 and 8s have created the story, the song lyrics, the characters, the name, the lore of the world of the story, and the year 13s having that wonderful ownership of the music, and then seeing their music performed by somebody else and writing for a brief and seeing that all come together. I think there's a joy for all of our students.
And also, I mean, so many students are focused on with NCA, how much credits can I get for something? Or what is the task? What do I need to do to get excellence? And we started the year off with them saying, you've got to basically write the music for this within the next month. And so forget about NCA, forget about course outlines, forget about everything else, forget about how it's going to work. We just need to get going because the prep schoolers or the year 7 and 8s, they need to have tracks to rehearse to within the next 3 to 4 weeks. And so the year 13s were shell-shocked initially, and once they got over it, they were like, this is great, let's go for it. And the buy-in from them, so I suppose the most valuable thing for me was the buy-in from the students and how they were highly motivated, and they weren't at any stage thinking about how is this going to contribute to my credit counting for NCA. It was just about, we're creating a musical. This is fun. Let's go. So, yeah, it was a real cool atmosphere and buzz in the class. And it created a really cool culture that then carried through the class for the rest of the year. Everything about the rest of the year was about having a good time and being creative together. And I suppose this project really set the tone for that class.
That sounds amazing. Now, I'm a high school music teacher, and I'm just thinking, how did you create a relationship with an intermediate teacher to be able to even pull off this project?
We're lucky that we are in a school that we have years 0 to 13 within the one campus. I still think it could be done across schools, across a feeder school for an intermediate and high school teacher. I think all you have to have is a willingness and a little bit of high wire risk taking to just believe that it will work if you start it, which is pretty much how any creative arts happen. You think, this is an idea, and off you go, and you just do the very next thing that needs to be done, rather than worrying about how it's all going to come together at the end.
Okay, now, Ginny, I don't know that much about your teaching background. Are you a music specialist teacher, or are you a classroom intermediate teacher?
I am just an educator. I'm a teacher artist, so I work with year 0 right through to tertiary, just in various places that I do. I have been the music teacher in a school. I was a music advisor for ministry back in the olden days when our first Orange Arts curriculum came out. And I have been a drama specialist for 30 years, but I have a real love of musical theatre. So I tend to be linked strongly into the music world. I can play rudimentary, guitar and piano for small children to sing along to. Don't tease me about my flute. And so I have a real love of music. I took music through high school and at the start of university and all of that.
So Ginny and I work together on a lot of our musicals. So we do 2 high school musicals every year. We also do a Year 9 and 10 show, which Ginny directs and I musically direct. And then one of our Year 11 to 13 show, previous HOD of drama would direct that and I would musically direct it. But Ginny would produce that show because she's also our arts coordinator in the school. And then every second year we do a Year 7 and 8 musical. So that's what the subject of the article is about, was the one that we created last year. And we're at the stage now of looking at next year's show, thinking, maybe we'll just hire in a Disney Junior and just make it a bit easier for us. And no, but the Year 7 and 8s are already saying, so when are we going to start writing it? When do we get our chance to do it? And so that's going to be good. It's going to be interesting because obviously I have different Year 13 students next year. And so we're not going to be able to follow the same process as the ones we did last time. So it's going to be a good challenge for us to see if we can still adapt the process that we had to make it work with a different cohort of students.
Writing your own show gives you freedom to tailor it to who the students you've got. You can change lines, you can change songs, you can say to the composers, hey, can we have another extra chorus in here? Or could this song be shorter? Can it be faster? Can it be in a different key? And you've just got a whole lot of freedom that you don't get from a show that you buy in, sadly. And we can tailor it because we have to make it break even. We don't have a budget for it, so it's a break even situation. So we have to use the resources that are around, borrow costumes from other schools, or choose things that are going to make sense, that are easy to get. Pirate costumes are always easy to get. Go op shopping and chop up some things. So I don't know, we have to see what these next group of students come up with.
I was really inspired by the article. When I got it submitted and I read through it, I was really excited, and I thought to myself, I would love, this is inspirational, this is something I'd like to do. But what's the first step? Let's just say you don't have a relationship with, an intermediate school, or you're just, you don't have the background in musical theatre and you're just kind of starting fresh with enthusiasm but no experience. What would a good first step be?
I think the first step, if you were in a high school, you mean? I think you'd go and approach an intermediate or a full primary with 7/8s and say, is there somebody here who's interested in doing this, obviously? And if there is, I think you'd start out by getting some advice about where is a good place to start a story. Do they have a story that they would like to tell because sometimes you'll have a student in the school that's very good, story writer in terms of the construction of an outline of a story. It could be put to a particular group if you have any writing groups, or they have an FPS group, or someone who's just there. They can gather groups together for those things. So there's no reason they can't gather together a small group who are interested in starting something. I would also say you'd want a good term of writing before they were going to embark on the actual starting the work if you had never done it before. We tend to do the starting and the working at the same time because we know where we're going. But if you didn't have that, I'd say you'd need a whole term to get the storyline out, to get the brief for the music. So once the storyline's done and you look at where the placement of musical theatre songs should go, there are some common places that musical theatre songs go. The tradition is to say that when our feelings, we can't speak about our feelings anymore, we sing. And when we can't sing about our feelings anymore, we dance. So you do have to make the story drive towards earning that solo song. There needs to be a reason for it to be there, rather than sometimes jukebox musicals tend to poke things in odd places. So I think working them through that to get the story and the song structure. And then when you've got possible songs.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why it worked well with that Year 13 group in particular is because we'd spent, it had taken them for 3 or 4 years of going through this process of focusing on group composition and collaborative exercises, and also working to timelines and producing things fast. So, for example, in my last week of term with my Year 10s, I gave them a new task. I put them in about, 18 in the class. So I had them in 4 groups, some of 4, some of 5. You've got 3 periods to create a piece of music based upon a guitar sample I'm giving you inside Soundtrap. And you've got 3 periods, and it's got to be a minute long, and you have to play it to each other by the end of the 3 periods. And so just those kind of mini tasks they do regularly. So they're used to working with different people and learning how to work off each other's strengths and cross-pollination of ideas and collaborative. Because I've done a lot of that sort of stuff through year 10, 11, 12. When it came to year 13, they sort of knew they had a direction. It wasn't, it was a little bit, we're going to write a musical. They actually didn't, we were right. We know where we're going to go. We'll just start. And we're not going to focus on making it good or amazing. We'll just start and just do the next step and the next step and the next step. But just going back to perhaps earlier in the process, if it's something which is not, if there's not the relationship between a high school and an intermediate, then doesn't have to go between schools. So we did a show back in 2014 that a year 13 student wrote and was put on for our year 9 and 10 musical. And it was called Suspect. You can actually find that on Spotify. Oh, actually, can you find it on Spotify?
No.
It might be. I'll have to look. It's certainly on stuff about it on YouTube. And so that was a particularly talented year 13 who really loved musical theatre, but he had a great team of people that Ginny put around him who helped him with the script writing process. He did by far the majority of the composition, but a lot of the script writing, the development of the story was done with a team of about 8 or so students that were in year 11, 12, 13. And so the reason why that worked well, that show, is it was just what was in front of us. We weren't trying to work between campuses or things like that. He just wanted to write a musical. He came up with a particularly good storyline. He was a talented composer. And so it's a matter of just getting his students saying, okay, we give you the permission to do it and we're going to help you. And it wasn't so much we know how to do this. Now, Ginny had done lots of this sort of work with students in the past, but I'd never done anything like that before, mentoring a student through the composition process. So I was flying blind a little bit through it as well, but it was more of just that willingness of saying, well, we don't know how it's going to turn out, but let's just start. Let's give ourselves a deadline. Let's give ourselves a target date that we have to deliver this by, so we know we have to deliver. We can't just sort of let it peter out after 6 weeks. And that then worked really well for us at that time. And so it wasn't a matter of trying to be too complicated or too over the top. We'll just let it see how it goes. But the key thing is that we had willing people when we gave them permission and we just started.
Yeah, I think the teacher role at that point is to be the person who facilitates in the truest sense of going, here's a room you can use. Here you can be out of class for this time or not, or this is the email that I will send saying you all have to turn up to this or you're off the task. So you do the admin stuff that's hard for students to do to their peers, but you are literally facilitating. Then you're just in the room to go, looks like it's going well, everybody, carry on. You're sort of the cheerleader with the pom-poms rather than the person who necessarily knows what's going to happen next, if there are students who want to lead it. And I think then you can take a lead student aside afterwards and say, hey, this might be a good idea. Why don't you try this or this next time, instead of doing it over the top of the student or in front of the others. And I think that's a nicer way of supporting. I think we probably both do that for students often.
Just hearing about the enthusiasm of the students and their ownership of it all, are there ever any situations where there is a lack of buy-in from students?
Not for your composers, because they're all people who are taking music, so that's a different situation. For the year 7, 8s at my particular school, it's been decided that this is an education opportunity for students, much in the way that everyone has to go to swimming sports or cross country. Everyone has to be in production. And it's not necessarily because you're going to love this for the rest of your life. Just as many students hate cross country, there will be students that for them performance isn't their thing. But however, we've opened their minds and their experience to this because it might be the only time in their whole life that they're on stage. And so we do it as safely as we can. There are places that they can be in a large ensemble and sort of essentially hide a little bit if they need to. We're aware from the relationships with the teachers and with the classroom teacher who knows their children well to say, just be careful of this person. They're feeling very nervous or they're very worried. Can they be towards the back or can they be partnered with this child to make them feel more comfy? So we try and do as much of that as we can.
In terms of the writing aspect of it, though, rather than the performance aspect of it, Ginny does have a team of students at Year 7 and 8 who are decided theatre is their thing. That's like a Monday afternoon club. And they're the ones who do the majority of the writing and the conceptualising around it. So they've all chosen to be there because they want to be performers. They love music theatre. So that's who the that's the core that Ginny's working with. And then because we've got to have all 200 students in year 7 and 8 on stage, then each class has a particular song or a particular scene that they then come on as the ensemble, which they sing, and they've got to learn their dance and choreography for it. And that's the issue then, getting all the buy-in, because obviously you're going to get some kids that think, I don't want to dress up in costume and put makeup on and dance on stage.
They do once they get there.
Once they get there, they realise they quite like it. And then they refuse to admit it ever again. But they did. And so that's where perhaps if there's the buy-in, it's just the general, because you've got to involve all 200 kids that are in year 7 and 8. And there's going to be some who are not going to enjoy it, just like some who won't enjoy cross-country or swimming sports. But in terms of the writing of the show, no, it's real easy. They're highly motivated. They want to be there. They've signed up to it.
I've got more students than I can take this year for wanting to be part of the writing team. I'll have to split them, and I don't know how we'll do that. We'll figure it out when we get there.
Maybe one last question, because I know you've got other things scheduled for today.
Another workshop, yes.
Yeah. I was just wondering how much of this is all possible because of all the work you do in advance. Like you were saying, Duncan, with the year 13s, they've been doing mini tasks all the way through their musical learning. So is the culture of the school where this is just normalised and you've kind of been setting them up for success all the way through?
It's the culture of your department, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the cultural department is that we share music regularly. Even from year 10, everything they write has to be shared. At no stage should they be writing a piece of music which then gets submitted to me via Teams or Dropbox or whatever, and then I mark it and give them a grade and no one ever hears it. Everything should be shared. And because of that, that really sets up this... I mean, that's probably the one thing I've done that's made composition go well in the last 5 or 6 years, is that students have because they know that people are going to hear it, they therefore take it more seriously and they put a lot more work into it. And then when we're going through our checkpointing and our initial formative assessment, sort of, I suppose, stages, students are hearing each other's work and they realise that, maybe mine's not quite as good as someone else's, or maybe someone else has got a cool idea. I want to use that kind of idea in mine, and they sort of cross-pollinate ideas like that. And so because that's been regularly happening through it, I've never forced students to compose in a style of music they don't want to compose in. So composition is primarily looking at the music that they love, whether it be EDM or hip-hop or country music or romantic impressionism type music, and then analysing it within the musical elements and figuring out how am I going to create music in that sort of style, that sort of genre. So because they've gone through that process of being able to analyse what's good and then recreate with their own voice, when it came to this project, when we told them, we divided the class up into groups who were going to write certain songs, like we gave 2 of the girls what was going to be the solo lead actress's ballad, power ballad sort of thing. And we said, okay, we looked at the musicals our year 13s had been involved in and said, okay, here are some songs you can listen to in the style that you're going to compose in. And then for the opening of the show, which just had to be upbeat and bouncy and boppy and had dancing, and was also going to be the finale of the show, so it's got to be really singable and everyone's going to have to go out with a tune in their head. It's got to be super catchy. We then we gave the highlighted songs from other musicals that the students had been involved in, from Curtains and Legally Blonde and You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and other shows they'd done, that will fit that bill. And so the students were able to analyse that. Because we'd built up those analysis skills over the previous several years, they were able to look at these songs, work out structurally what's going on. We gave them constraints about what the pitch range should be within an octave. It should be simple to sing for that age group. And that was a bit of trial and error. We didn't get that right initially. Some of them we had to come back and have them change the key for them. Sometimes we had to pull a male vocalist out of the demo track that was recorded and put a female vocalist there instead, because the unbroken voices of the year 7 and 8 struggled to pitch it when they heard a low voice in there. And so it was a bit of, it was a back and forth process with that a little bit. But that whole setting of the culture of we're going to work together, we're going to work fast, we're going to have deadlines and we're going to meet them, that meant that we could walk straight in on day 1 of year 13 and say, this is a project, let's go. There was no pre-teaching as such. There was no workshopping of ideas. It was just like, this has got to be done in 3 weeks, guys. You've essentially got 12 to 15 periods, and that's it. We got to go. That was all completely built upon. Now, I referenced before that, the next year's Year 13 group won't be able to do the same thing because they're quite a different kind of group. The class is slightly smaller for a start. They don't have the nice balance of music theatre kids that this particular class had. So that's why we've got to think the concept of the show musically, how's it going to be? Is it feasible for us to do it with that Year 13 class? Or are we going to find just some of the people out, pull some of the people out of it and make a separate music theatre writing club? The different options we'll have to look at. We're not going to say that the template we've got this time is what we're going to follow every time. We do need to adapt it according to the students and the talent that we have available, I suppose.
Cool. Just to round everything off, is there anything you want to say to our listeners? Any final thoughts, words of wisdom, a call to action, anything like that?
Just get your students involved in creating original work. It doesn't matter if it's going to be shown to 100 people or just to their fellow classmates. If they can create work and get that sense of achievement and joy out of that, they won't turn to AI to do it.
Yeah, for the Year 13 class, it was the best thing they'd ever done in terms of their enjoyment and their ownership and their pride in it. I still remember I was doing sound for the actual live production of the show, but I could see all my Year 13 sitting down halfway through the theatre, and they were bopping along, singing along, having a great time, giving starting the standing ovation at the end. They were so proud of the music they'd written that they then got to see live on stage. They were used to writing music and performing at things like Rockquest and, Big Sing and chamber music and all of that. But for them to have written something and then pass it off to a whole other group of students who then made it their own and then performed it in their own way was a real nice process for them to sort of know they've created this work and then pass it over, and it's kind of disassociated themselves from it to a certain extent, but then got to see it come alive in the context of the overall show because they've been so focused on their one song, but then get to see in the overall production with the lights, with the costumes, with the set, with all the polish that came with it. They went out of it just feeling just absolutely stoked with themselves for what they'd done. And it'll be a moment which they have for the rest of their lives. I mean, some of them have gone on to music production degrees and songwriting degrees and choral conducting degrees at Auckland and Victoria, and others are not going to continue with music. But yet they'll always have this show that they've created which they can go and look back on Spotify and say, yeah, I did that. That was my track. That was a cool experience. So it was a real nice moment that pushed us beyond NCEA and pushed us beyond assessment and showed that those things really are irrelevant when it comes to good quality teaching and learning. And so the more real world stuff you can do with your students where what they create actually gets heard by people, the better.
Thank you both very much.
Nice.
Thank you.
Well done.
Nā mihi whakanuia kia Bradley me te whare crescendo. Nā mihi anō kia Lions Foundation mō te putia tautoko. E te iwi, ko Jessica tēnei, mā te wā.